Let's dive into another story from the cosmos, a tale of heartbreak, discovery, and the choices that define our final moments. What legacy do you hope to leave behind? Today, I was reminded how important it is to express love to those who truly deserve it, to embrace them tightly every day. Yet, life is a cruel way of teaching us lessons. My revelation came when I returned home early to share news about my diagnosis with my wife, Jane. This is a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I have no intention of sharing this with people in my real life, as my current situation and the path I've chosen don't allow for open discussions. On the 1st of December, my worst fears were confirmed. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. With this, I know that the upcoming holiday season will likely be my last. I've come to terms with the reality of my situation. I've had a good life, filled with accomplishments and memories. Everyone I care about will be taken care of after I'm gone. Being a private person, I hadn't shared the results of my tests with Jane. I didn't want to worry her until I had all the answers. That day, I returned home earlier than usual, intending to have a face-to-face conversation. A discussion of this magnitude deserved more than a phone call or a text message. But the life I thought I knew unraveled the moment I arrived home. I noticed a car parked in the driveway, one that was hard to miss. It belonged to one of my business partners, a flashy vehicle with a personalized license plate. Instinctively, I felt something was wrong. Pulling out my phone, I accessed our home camera system, only to discover it had been set to privacy mode, meaning it wasn't recording. Choosing not to jump to conclusions, I drove to my farm property instead. You see, I've always enjoyed using the cameras to observe wildlife or watch storms roll in. Years ago, I set up a secondary recording system that archives footage locally. Unlike the main system, this archive isn't accessible through my phone. Once I arrived at the farm, I opened my computer and reviewed the backup footage. What I saw confirmed my suspicions and destroyed me. Jane and my business partner were in the living room, sharing wine and dancing intimately. The footage continued as they made their way upstairs to our bedroom. The open doors allowed the microphone to capture everything after they left the camera's view. It was devastating, but with the time I've left, I realized I needed answers more than I needed the drama of confrontation. That moment marked the end of any love or devotion I once felt for Jane. The emotions that followed were exactly what you'd expect: anger, betrayal, sadness. But through it all, I knew this wasn't my fault. For over 2 decades, I've been a faithful, attentive, and romantic husband. Now, I've chosen to focus on myself. I contacted my lawyer to review my will and prenup, sharing what I'd uncovered. The investigation revealed disturbing details, leaving me to wonder if I ever truly knew the woman I married, or if she had changed somewhere along the way. Either way, I've decided not to tell my kids or Jane about my diagnosis yet. Jane and I never had children together, but my twins from a previous relationship mean the world to me. I plan to endure the holidays, giving my family one last joyous season together before sharing the truth. As for Jane, her presence during this time is meaningless to me. She's become nothing more than a background detail in the grander picture of my life. Jane's affair partner is a widower in his 50s, someone I knew as a business associate rather than a friend. While Jane and I are in our first marriage, I never married the twins' mother, Sarah. We had our children when we were very young, and she later married a wonderful man named Steve. Together, we co-parented well, creating a bond that has endured into our 60s. Sarah and Steve have always been part of our family traditions, including the week-long Christmas celebrations at my farm. Jane and I married in our 30s, both established in our careers and financially secure. By her insistence, we agreed not to disclose our full assets to one another. She came into the marriage with a lucrative job, a great pension, and 2 sizable inheritances protected in a trust. The prenup she demanded ensures any premarital assets remain separate. Meanwhile, I've been the one supporting her lifestyle, covering all housing, utilities, and shared expenses. Her wealth is reserved for her own indulgences: cars, cosmetic surgery, and vacations for herself. Jane is a stunning woman outwardly, but her actions have revealed an ugly truth about her character. A few days after my diagnosis, I announced my retirement from my nonprofit work. Knowing what I do now, I recall her unease at this news, likely because my presence at home would disrupt her extracurricular activities. With the camera footage secured and shared with my lawyer, I've distanced myself emotionally from Jane's betrayal. Whatever she does now is irrelevant to me. I'll spend my remaining time creating lasting memories with my kids and grandkids, ensuring they know how much they mean to me. After the new year, I'll take the necessary steps to secure my legacy and ensure Jane's betrayal doesn't tarnish the life I've built for those who truly matter. Winter on the farm means practical clothing and lots of layering. Coveralls are a staple for me. A fair partner, on the other hand, doesn't quite fit the rugged image Jane probably expects. What she doesn't seem to realize is that he's far from the wealthy man she likely imagines him to be. I know this because the trust one manage has investments in his business, and I receive quarterly financial reports. If only she understood how little he actually has. As for my finances, I've always kept those details private, shared only with my accountants. Let's just say that over the past 30 years, the trust has grown significantly. I live modestly by choice, but there's more than enough wealth to ensure my great-great-grandchildren can enjoy the farm and pursue their education without worry. Once Jane realizes what she's thrown away, it'll be her reckoning. Unfortunately, I won't be around to witness it. December turned into a whirlwind of activity. Between wrapping up my job and attending our usual social events, I found it easier to keep myself composed. Jane, of course, hasn't shown any signs that she suspects I know about the affair. At one of the holiday parties, a fair partner was in attendance, and I couldn't help but watch them closely. I'm fairly certain I wasn't caught, but observing their dynamic left a bitter taste in my mouth. I'll admit, I haven't been proud of my actions lately. We still share the same bed, and though I find myself detached from her emotionally, I haven't been above using her for physical comfort. It's a small deceit, but it weighs on me, especially given the larger betrayal on her end. Regardless, Jane won't be getting everything when all is said and done. Far from it. The trust is secured, managed by capable hands, and its future is carefully planned. Jane's access to me and my assets will be entirely severed once the end is near, or if I pass unexpectedly. In light of the comments and advice I've received, I've made additional preparations. Should my health deteriorate faster than anticipated, I've arranged for in-home care. Jane will not be part of that process. My lawyer will ensure that Sarah, Steve, and my kids are informed and involved. Jane, however, will be excluded. Important documents and valuables have already been moved to a secure location. I've also started writing letters to each family member, and even one for Jane. Surprisingly, the letters have been harder to write than I expected. As we head into the holiday week, I wanted to provide this update and express my gratitude for the support and advice I've received. I might not check in much during the festivities, but that's part of the plan. This time with my family is sacred, and I want to focus on making the most of it. The community's responses have been incredibly validating. One commenter, NZ Deep Diver, suggested recording videos during the holidays to leave behind more than just memories, an idea I've decided to embrace. Future generations should have more than just photos. They should hear my voice, see my laughter, and feel the warmth of the family traditions I've worked so hard to create. Another comment hit on a critical point: Jane's ignorance of a fair partner's true financial situation. She's either too blinded by her own assumptions or too foolish to question his facade. In either case, it's a poor reflection of her judgment and character. Mission accomplished. We enjoyed a wonderful, drama-free holiday week, and I've officially made it into 2023. I find humor helps me cope, so I apologize in advance if my tone seems a bit irreverent. With all the holiday participants now dispersed, I'm left with a few observations about Jane. I genuinely believe this affair is her first time stepping out, though that doesn't make it any easier to stomach. Being surrounded by family all week seemed to wear on her. Once you know someone's secret, their actions suddenly make much more sense. She guarded her phone with unusual secrecy and often stepped outside for air during family gatherings. The most telling moment came when she decided to run into town for an errand. One of the grandkids asked to join her, but the lengths she went to in order to avoid taking them were almost comical. I couldn't resist playing along, casually questioning her excuses in front of everyone. Watching her squirm was a small but satisfying victory. Now that I'm officially retired, Jane's behavior has shifted. She's suddenly curious about my plans for the day or week, likely worried that my newfound availability might interfere with her extramarital escapades. Her transparent attempts at managing the situation are, frankly, pathetic. But I'm playing along for now, maintaining the calm facade she's come to expect from me. This week, I decided to test a theory someone shared online. Unpredictability is a cheater's greatest fear. So, I casually told Jane we should meet up for lunch later in the week, pretending it was simply because I'd be in the area. The truth? I wanted to throw her off balance, mess with her a little. Her reaction was exactly what I expected, nervous but trying to play it cool. Earlier this morning, I met with my lawyer to finalize some significant decisions. I replaced my temporary will with a permanent one, carefully designed to ensure there are no loose ends. In preparation for the chaos that may soon unfold, I had my lawyer draft divorce papers. Given the terms of our prenup and the undeniable evidence of her affair, Jane stands to gain very little. She'll get a mere 25% of our shared assets, things like furniture and housewares, but none of my liquid assets, retirement funds, or anything I purchased with my own money. If I push it further, she could even be required to pay me alimony. The divorce packet is complete, including all the evidence of her infidelity. I've signed everything, but I'm holding on to it for now, keeping it as leverage should I choose to use it. To protect the family's future, I sold my personal loan to the trust, which will allow the trustees to convert it into shares in a fair partners company. Speaking of the trust, I've solidified how it will be managed after I'm gone. I'll reduce my role to a 1% trustee, while the twins will hold the majority share. The remaining trusteeship will go to my 4 grandchildren, with Sarah and Steve acting as proxies until the grandkids turn 24. If any fractional shares remain, Sarah will get the extra voting rights. Next week, I plan a meeting with the twins, Sarah, and Steve to explain everything. They'll need to sign documents, and I'm prepared to tell them the full truth. Once this is complete, Jane's share of my assets will be negligible compared to the value held within the trust. I've also started dispersing personal items I want to leave for the kids and grandkids, ensuring they're in a safe location accessible to my lawyer. As for my health, I've chosen not to fight the disease. I want my remaining time to be free of the grueling side effects of treatment. This week, I noticed myself getting tired more easily, and the family picked up on it too. I brushed it off as simply getting older, but the truth is I know it's the beginning of the decline. The persistent cough that started all of this remains, though I've been passing it off as a lingering side effect of COVID. I expect things to escalate quickly once other symptoms emerge, but by then, everyone will be aware of my condition. I've also been thinking about taking a short trip for myself, a final act of closure. But more importantly, I'm planning one-on-one days with each of my children and grandchildren. That's my next goal, to create lasting memories with each of them individually. Writing the letters to my loved ones has been the hardest part of all. I haven't finished yet, but I'm determined to see them through. When the time comes, they'll have those letters as a final piece of me. Update 3. The big meeting with my lawyer, a notary, the twins, Sarah, and Steve took place today at the farm. It was an emotional, intense gathering, but the tasks I needed to complete are now done. As expected, the family was both hurt and angry when they saw the lawyer and notary. It was clear this was no ordinary meeting. I took the time to explain everything, laying out my diagnosis, Jane's betrayal, and my plans for the future. While their reactions were understandably emotional, I felt a sense of relief in finally being honest with them. This was a step toward ensuring that my legacy remains intact and protected for those who truly matter to me. As the family gathered around the dining table, transformed into an impromptu conference room, I asked for their patience and silence. "Please just listen," I told them. "Once I finish explaining, you'll sign the documents, and then I'll answer all of your questions." They nodded, the room heavy with unspoken anticipation. They were already familiar with the trust. Its existence was no secret, but I explained it was now time for me to relinquish control and transfer it to them. I detailed how vital the trust had been throughout my life, why I created it, and how it was intentionally kept separate from my marriage to Jane by mutual agreement. I also outlined my expectations for how it should be managed moving forward, emphasizing the importance of maintaining its purpose. The trust would be divided among the twins and the grandchildren. Sarah and Steve would serve as proxy voters for the grandchildren until each turned 25, ensuring sound decisions during the transition. Their trust in me was apparent. They signed the documents without hesitation, and the notary sealed everything. My lawyer and the notary then excused themselves, gracious as ever for making the trip on a Sunday. Returning to the dining room, I found the family unusually quiet. It was my daughter who finally broke the silence, unleashing a cascade of questions. They poured out in a stream of consciousness, one overlapping the next. When she finally paused, I began to address the first and most pressing matter, my health. I explained the reality of my diagnosis, describing the grim odds and the second opinion I had sought. Then, I dropped the truth that I had already accepted myself. I will not seek treatment. I'm choosing to let nature take its course, I said firmly, bracing for the inevitable reactions. As expected, the room erupted. For the next hour and a half, we argued. My daughter, overwhelmed, left the room several times, with Sarah following to comfort her. While they were gone, Steve, my son, and I shared a heart-to-heart. Though they didn't agree with my decision, they eventually understood where I was coming from. The consensus was that Sarah and my daughter would come around in time. When emotions began to settle, my daughter cut through the calm like a detective. "When did you find out?" she asked. The question was pointed, and I couldn't evade it. I told them everything. There was another wave of anger and sadness as I recounted the timeline, explaining that I had kept the news to myself so we could have one last holiday week without the shadow of my diagnosis looming over us. It was selfish, I admitted, but I didn't want this to taint your holidays forever. But my daughter wasn't done. Her next question was sharper. How in the world did Jane not tell us? And that was when I dropped the final bombshell. I told them about Jane's betrayal in exact detail, recounting the events just as I shared them in my initial post. For the first time, I saw a real fire in my daughter's eyes, a protective anger that mirrored my own. I explained that Jane still doesn't know I'm aware of the affair. The group began piecing together her behavior during the holiday week. Her frequent air breaks and the trip into town, where she suspiciously refused to take a grandchild along. They realized how much I had shouldered alone, and their concern deepened. I reassured them that I hadn't been entirely isolated. I've had support from online friends who've helped me through the toughest moments, I said. When they pressed for more details, I declined, insisting this space was mine and mine alone for now at least. After the emotional whirlwind, I shifted the focus back to the trust. I wanted them to understand its true purpose, protecting the family and ensuring Jane couldn't access my hard-earned wealth. That's why she hadn't been included in this meeting. I then revealed the financials of the trust. I could see they had always assumed it was simply a tax strategy or a way to safeguard assets in a complex family structure. They weren't prepared for what I shared. As I went through the balance sheets and listed the assets, the room fell silent. The sheer magnitude of the trust's value left them speechless. Finally, one of them broke the silence. "Why did you work so hard all these years when you had this much?" they asked. I smiled, having anticipated the question. I explained my philosophy on personal finance, one they'd heard from me many times before. "I believe in living modestly," I said, "and ensuring security for the future." What they didn't realize was that I had lived off the trust all these years, using it to provide for them, while letting it grow into the generational safety net it was always meant to be. I explained to my family how the trust shaped my life. It wasn't just a financial tool. It gave me the freedom to put my children through college, to carve out time for them when they needed me, and to dedicate years of my life to meaningful work. Because of the trust, I was able to work for a nonprofit essentially for free, focusing on building relationships, training others, and making a tangible impact. Writing a check to a charity is one thing, but rolling up your sleeves and contributing to a cause you believe in leaves a much deeper legacy. As I spoke, I urged them to carry forward the values the trust embodies. This isn't just about financial security, I told them. It's about using what you've been given to make the world better, not just by giving money, but by giving your time and energy to causes that matter. Though the conversation was necessary, it left me with mixed feelings. I wasn't happy that everyone's lives had been profoundly altered, both positively and negatively, because of my revelations. It wasn't the way I wanted this to unfold, but it was done. They now knew everything. I pleaded with them to let me handle Jane on my own terms and to keep the trust and its details confidential for now. We agreed to maintain the status quo until my health takes a noticeable turn, at which point changes will be made. Reluctantly, they all agreed. After the heavy discussion, we spent the rest of the day cooking, crying, laughing, and breaking into smaller groups for private conversations. They left about an hour ago, though I fully expect the twins to return with their spouses. That's just the kind of close family we are, and I love my in-laws as much as my own children. Last night was likely my last truly quiet evening. While I feel a sense of relief for unburdening myself, it has been replaced by a new weight of worry. But for now, I'll take comfort in the support of my loved ones. To those reading this, tell your loved ones how you feel and give them a hug. You never know when it might be your last chance. This morning, I was surprised by an unexpected visitor. Carol, an old friend of Jane's and someone I had introduced to her years ago. Carol is close to Jane, and last week she hosted the infamous girls' night that ended with Jane coming home extremely intoxicated via a rideshare. Over coffee, Carol shared why she was there. Apparently, during that drunken evening, Jane reached a breaking point and began to confide in Carol about her affair. Despite Carol repeatedly urging her to stop, Jane kept spilling details, justifying her actions in a rambling, intoxicated stream of excuses. Carol, furious, condemned Jane for her behavior, but it didn't stop the confessions. The next day, Carol reached out to Jane, only to find that Jane claimed she didn't remember the conversation. When confronted, Jane denied everything, insisting that Carol must be mistaken. Carol, not one to tolerate lies, gave Jane an ultimatum. She had 1 week to come clean, or Carol would tell me herself. When Jane continued to deny the affair, Carol decided to take matters into her own hands, which led to her visit with me. Carol expected me to be blindsided and devastated by her revelations. Instead, I surprised her by calmly telling her that I already knew. I then asked who else had been present during Jane's drunken confession. Carol assured me that she was the only one who had heard it. I pressed further, asking if she had shared this information with anyone else. Carol, slightly offended, told me she wouldn't spread something like that before telling me first. I apologized, explaining that I had my own timeline for addressing Jane's betrayal. Adding others into the mix right now would complicate things, I told her. Carol understood, but admitted she felt uncomfortable pretending to believe Jane's lies. I asked her, as a favor, to let Jane think she had gotten away with it, at least for now. Carol reluctantly agreed, but made it clear she wasn't entirely comfortable with the request. I thanked her and told her I appreciated her willingness to help. If I need anything else, I'll reach out, I assured her. I know I'll owe her another apology when I eventually share my diagnosis, but that's a bridge I'll cross another day. Tomorrow is the day. Jane and I have a standing date night, and I plan to use the opportunity to confront her. My approach will be calm and matter-of-fact. I'll tell her what I know about the affair, lay out my diagnosis, and explain how I intend to spend the rest of my life without her. I've chosen a public setting for this conversation, hoping it will keep emotions in check and prevent any dramatic outbursts. While I don't expect Jane to react with dignity, I'm determined to hold my ground. The time has come to sever this toxic bond and focus on the people and moments that truly matter. Wish me strength. As Mike Tyson famously said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, I can confirm that no plan goes perfectly as envisioned, and mine was no exception. But it's done. Let me set the stage for how I planned and executed the confrontation. Jane and I have a weekly date night at the same restaurant, our usual spot tucked away in the back. It's quiet, public, but distanced from the noise of the bar. The perfect setting for what I hoped would be a controlled conversation. My plan was to wait until dessert to confront her, ensuring that everything was prepared beforehand. I arranged for my lawyer and his wife to have reservations at the same time, seated nearby. I also prepaid for both parties' meals through our longtime server, who I trust. Carol, ever the reliable friend, was on standby to help Jane after I left. I had the whole thing meticulously planned. Record the conversation discreetly. Confront Jane about her affair. Reveal my diagnosis and explain how I intend to spend my remaining days. Hand her a letter instructing her not to contact me, my family, or visit the farm. Present her with the divorce papers and evidence. Leave the restaurant calmly, maintaining composure. I assumed Jane would keep her emotions in check to protect her social image. While things didn't go exactly as expected, the evening unfolded with surprising clarity. The meal began uneventfully. Jane, unaware of what was coming, gushed about our relationship. She praised how great we've been as a team over the years, completely unaware of the storm brewing. When the moment felt right, I started with pointed but calm questions. "Do I treat you well?" "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "Have I ever hurt you or mistreated you?" "Never," she insisted. Then I dropped the question. "Why did you cheat on me?" The confident, composed Jane I knew vanished. She stammered, claiming that whatever Carol had told me was wrong. I stopped her mid-sentence. I knew before Carol ever said anything. Her face turned pale, and the words she seemed prepared to use as a defense disappeared. She nodded silently, her pride replaced by a deer-in-the-headlights expression. I explained the events that led me to this moment. Rushing home after my doctor's appointment, eager to share my diagnosis with the one person I trusted most, only to find my business partner's car in the driveway. I told her how I checked the cameras, saw they were in privacy mode, and decided to go to the farm instead. "I still have the footage," I added, cutting off her attempt to interject by raising my hand. Then I revealed my diagnosis, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and my decision not to fight it. For a moment, I saw heartbreak in her eyes, and it enraged me. How could she feel sorrow for me after what she had done? I pushed the anger aside and stayed focused. At my signal, our waitress approached with my lawyer. He handed me a briefcase and a folder containing the letter. I signed it in front of them and had the server witness it. Calmly, I handed the letter to Jane, explaining that I no longer wanted her to contact me, my family, or come to the farm. Once I left tonight, I told her our relationship would be over. Finally, I handed her the briefcase, stating that it contained evidence of her infidelity and the divorce papers, which I had already signed. "You can sign them and start the proceedings," I said. "As long as I'm alive, you can stay at the house in town. I'll be at the farm, but I won't see or hear from you again." Jane, to her credit, kept her composure. She barely managed to quiet, but before I cut her off, "I'm done," I said firmly. "Carol will help you home." Then I stood up, thanked our server with a generous tip, and found the owner to apologize for not giving them a heads-up about the evening's events. As I was leaving, I spotted my son at the door with Carol. She passed me with a quick, concerned smile before heading inside to check on Jane. My son, sensing the gravity of the situation, offered to retrieve my truck. I stepped outside, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time all night. The weight of the confrontation was heavy, but the relief of being done with Jane was palpable. For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of peace. I'm doing okay, still above ground and at room temperature, as they say. Every day I can get up on my feet is a gift, though I've noticed my coughing has worsened, and I'm winded more easily. Despite the discomfort, this week has been a good one overall. Let's start with Jane. She's gone into hiding, so to speak. Once word spread about her infidelity, her status in our community plummeted rapidly. She's been quietly asked to step down from all her leadership roles, and most of her social circle has turned against her. Some women in the group even had the audacity to ask her outright if she had been chasing after their husbands. The fallout has been swift and merciless. Jane has attempted to contact me a few times, often through intermediaries. I've refused to engage. Each time, I've made it clear through the messenger. I've said all I need to say, and I don't need closure. I know who she is, and that's enough for me. Her attempts to reach out feel like yet another selfish plea for attention. The more I learn, the more disgusted I feel. Jane's affair lasted at least 6 months, during which they took 3 trips together. On one, they posed as newlyweds. On another, they celebrated a fabricated 20-year wedding anniversary. The last trip was a secret rendezvous where they pretended to accidentally meet at the same hotel. Role-playing was apparently part of their dynamic, a detail I could have lived without knowing. She even used my house as a rendezvous spot, citing its privacy and distance from the road. To cover her tracks, she bought a second car and stored it in a parking garage in town. I'm appalled by the lengths she went to deceive me, all while benefiting from the stability and security I provided. Jane's world continues to crumble. Her affair partner has completely discarded her now that she's no longer useful. When she turned to him for comfort after our confrontation, she realized what I already suspected. He only valued her for what she could offer him. Once the trustees informed him of their plan to convert the loan into shares and initiate a forensic audit, it was game over. My daughter, my MVP, has wasted no time in ensuring accountability. The affair partner, now realizing that Jane has no financial leverage and that the trust is in full control, unceremoniously cut ties with her. Adding insult to injury, Jane confessed to Carol that her personal trust is exhausted. The glamorous life she envisioned with the affair partner was nothing but a mirage. She thought his lifestyle, first-class flights, fancy restaurants, luxury cars, was a reflection of his wealth. Meanwhile, she dismissed my life at the farm, my old truck, and our economy flights as evidence of mediocrity. Ironically, she had no idea that my net worth far exceeds his. It sickens me to think about her greed and superficiality. She was willing to throw away decades of marriage for a fantasy. I won't be there to see it, but I expect my family will share the full scope of my worth after my death. I'm just glad her true colors emerge now, sparing my loved ones the burden of dealing with her. Carol continues to surprise me. After Jane left the farm, Carol returned to have a private conversation. She told me about Jane's realization that the affair partner had been using her and shared more details about the fallout. Then, out of the blue, Carol made an unexpected offer. "If you ever need companionship, give me a call," she said. Her boldness caught me off guard. I asked her why. Why would she or any woman want to be with someone like me, knowing my diagnosis? Her response was as flattering as it was shocking. "Just because Jane didn't know what she had doesn't mean others wouldn't. You're a hell of a man, and any time with you would be cherished. I'm sure there are plenty of women who'd line up for the chance. I just wanted to be the first in line." Carol even hinted that she and Sarah would ensure Jane's social circle learns the truth about our separation. While I was polite in my response, I made it clear I wasn't looking for that kind of complication in my life right now. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and left me to process her words. The past few days have been a roller coaster of emotions. While the drama with Jane feels like it's reaching its conclusion, the social fallout is just beginning. Soon, everyone will know not only about the breakup of my marriage, but also about my diagnosis. I'm bracing myself for an endless stream of well-wishers, which I've been dreading. I know people mean well, but I don't want to be treated differently. Still, I recognize that life is what it is, and I'll handle it as it comes. Tonight, I plan to enjoy a quiet dinner and some much-needed relaxation. Thank you all for your continued support. Your messages mean more to me than I can express. As always, hug your loved ones and let them know how much they mean to you. Raven Lyron, I was waiting for this update all day. My blood boiled when Jane asked why you wouldn't fight for her. After everything she did, the audacity is unreal. I'm glad the affair partner played her, and that your daughter is stepping up. She's the MVP. As for Carol, wow. Bold move, but she's not wrong. You are one hell of a man. Opie responds, "Thanks for your support. I admit, Carol's offer took me by surprise. She definitely believes in the saying, fortune favors the bold. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm focusing on my peace for now. Thanks again. I'm still here, though the past few weeks have been rough. I recently spent a few days in the hospital after being found unconscious at home. While I have a do not resuscitate DNR order, I hadn't stopped breathing, so they brought me to the ER. Waking up in the hospital, a place I despise, even more so now with my diagnosis, was disorienting. I've always said I don't want to die there, and that conviction hasn't changed. I'm back at the farm now, though my mobility is limited. The family doesn't want me driving on the property anymore, but I'm stubborn. I still insist on checking the fences, watching the sunrise, and enjoying the peace of my land. Home health care workers, or as I call them, babysitters, are here full-time. I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm not fighting my family on this one. Most of my time at the hospital was a blur. My twins, Sarah, and even Carol rotated shifts to stay with me, making sure I wasn't alone. However, there was one night when none of them could stay. That was when Jane, of all people, managed to sneak in. She used the wife card on a nurse who wasn't aware of the restrictions barring her from seeing me. When I woke up to find her sitting by my bed, holding my hand and stroking my head, I recoiled in shock. She was playing the part of a devoted and caring spouse, her face full of faux concern. For a moment, I couldn't process what was happening. Then, her words started, an endless stream of apologies and excuses. I didn't mean anything I said to him. I was trying to use him, she claimed, referring to the affair partner. It was pathetic. I stayed silent, refusing to engage. My indifference seemed to upset her more than anger would have. She demanded that I respond, her voice rising just enough to alert the nurse. The nurse stepped in smoothly, ushering Jane out with an excuse about needing to check on me. Once Jane was gone, the nurse closed the door and asked if I was okay. I explained the situation. Jane is my ex-wife, and she should not have been allowed in. Apologizing profusely, the nurse called my emergency contacts. Within 45 minutes, Sarah, my daughter, and Carol arrived, visibly concerned. By the time they walked in, Jane was back in the hallway, spewing her apologies and excuses in a quieter tone. Seeing them, Jane knew it was time to leave. I calmly asked her to go, reminding her that none of the other patients deserved a scene. She hesitated, gave me a quick peck on the forehead, something I instinctively flinched away from, and finally left. After she was gone, my family apologized profusely, though I couldn't blame them. They quickly set up a schedule to ensure I'm never left alone in the hospital again. Sarah likely thanked the nurse for calling them, while also making it crystal clear that Jane is not to be allowed in under any circumstances. This incident only reinforced what I already knew. Jane is a drowning person, desperately grabbing at anything to stay afloat. It's not about me. She doesn't see me as someone she cares about. I'm just a lifeline, a means to an end. Every interaction with her reveals more of the darkness in her soul. The affair partner situation hasn't improved either. His accounting team, realizing which way the wind is blowing, has cooperated fully with my daughter during her forensic review. While there's no criminal conduct, it's clear he exploited every loophole to maximize his personal income at the expense of the company's profitability. When my daughter takes control, his perks will be slashed, and his flashy lifestyle will hit a brick wall. He's looking at a 60% reduction in his earnings from the company. This reality has infuriated him. He's threatened lawsuits, but so far, nothing has materialized. His reputation and credit in our business circles are in shambles, and word is spreading fast. He's been trying to raise money from other investors to pay off the loan, but no one is biting. As I always say, you invest in people, not companies, and he's shown himself to be untrustworthy. My daughter is determined to preserve the company for its employees, ensuring it continues to operate despite the turmoil. Her dedication gives me peace, knowing that the fallout won't harm innocent workers. Despite everything, I've been cherishing my time with family and friends. We went to a high school basketball game together this week, and I hosted a poker night with my son, grandson, and some old friends. It was a great evening, filled with stories, laughter, and camaraderie. These moments remind me of what truly matters. Carol continues to visit occasionally, bringing dinner and companionship. I've kept her at arm's length, though. While her support is appreciated, I'm not ready for anything more. My focus remains on my family, my farm, and the legacy I'm leaving behind. I've also had a steady stream of friends and acquaintances dropping by. Someone mentioned the concept of a living wake, and I think that's exactly what's happening. I'm encouraging everyone to come visit, knowing these moments might be our last together. These interactions bring me comfort and joy, even amid the challenges. ID Guy 77. She bought a second car just to cover her tracks? That's some next-level scheming. There's no way she can call this an impulsive fling. As for the affair partner, I hope the forensic audit uncovers everything he's hiding. And Opie, I'm so glad you're surrounding yourself with family. You'll live on through the love and memories you've created. Opie responds, yes, Jane's level of deception is astonishing. She was meticulous in her scheming, but it's all catching up to her now. As for the affair partner, my daughter is handling him masterfully. I'm lucky to have such a sharp and dedicated family. Hello, everyone. This is the son of the man you've come to know through his posts here. It's with a heavy heart that I share the news of his passing earlier this week. Over the past few days, I've been reading through his posts and responses. Hearing his voice so clearly in his words has been both comforting and bittersweet. Before he passed, my father made a specific request to share a letter he wrote for you, his Reddit family. I hope it brings some solace to those who followed his journey. Well, if you're reading this letter, you know my time here has come to an end. As many of you suggested, I wrote letters to my family and created videos for them to cherish after I'm gone. But while reading your posts and comments, I realized something. You've become my Reddit family. So I decided to write one final letter to you. I want to thank you for your support, encouragement, and advice. These past few months, your words have been my lifeline, giving me a space to process and vent when I needed it most. Your help allowed me to achieve something precious. My last Christmas with my family, free of unnecessary pain or drama. That week was my final gift to myself and my loved ones. You might not realize this, but your suggestions had a profound impact. The little videos I made for my family, I wouldn't have done those without you. They were silly, heartfelt, and will give my loved ones another small piece of me to hold on to. That's all thanks to your encouragement. Truly, I cannot thank you enough. I have one small request. My family will be grieving and navigating a complex range of emotions in the weeks and months ahead. I know some of you may want closure regarding my story, but I ask for your patience. Please allow my family the space to heal. If they choose to provide an update on Jane, that decision will be theirs alone. As I close this letter, I wish you all the best. Remember, none of us are promised tomorrow. Value yourselves and the people who truly matter. If you ever find yourself walking a difficult road like mine, know that I will walk it with you in spirit. You are all worth so much. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. I send you all the love I can from wherever I may be. Saying thank you feels inadequate, but it's all I have right now. Thank you. I hope we meet again someday, but not too soon. With gratitude, your friend. One comment that stood out to me was from I Have Less One. It should be as thanking your father. He came here with an absolute nightmare scenario and handled it with a level of poise and charisma that most of us can only aspire to. The fact that his entire family, even the wayward wives, stood by him shows the strength of his character. He was, is, and will always be a benchmark for how to handle an affair with grace. What a ride! What a family! What a king! Another commenter wrote, your father's legacy will live on not just with his family, but with all of us who followed his story. He turned his pain into wisdom and shared it freely. My condolences to your family, and I hope his final days were filled with the peace and love he so richly deserved. My father's story touched many lives, and the support you gave him made a profound difference. He handled an impossible situation with courage and dignity, leaving behind not only a loving family, but also a legacy of resilience and hope. Thank you for walking this journey with him, for listening, and for helping him find peace in his final days. His memory will live on in the lessons he taught us all. Please continue to be kind to one another. And as he said, never forget your worth.